The story begins when a mysterious gate suddenly appears on Earth. From that gate, terrifying monsters pour out and begin destroying human civilization. But in the midst of the chaos, some people awaken with unique abilities. They are called players. These players rise up to fight back against the monsters and protect what's left of humanity. And this is where we meet our protagonist, Lee Hyun-wook, an F-rank player. However, in the future, the world doesn't survive. It falls into complete destruction. But not because of the monsters. It was the players themselves who brought the end. They called themselves the Divine. Players who gave their souls to demons and Satan himself. And in that moment, Lee Hyun-wook was killed by them. Something crazy just happened. Lee suddenly reincarnated. He was sent back to the very beginning, before everything went wrong. Now, he finds himself once again at the AMT training camp. That's short for Anti-Monster Troop. A camp filled with players preparing to protect Earth. And just like before, F-rank players always get bullied. Lee is called by his superior, Oh Sang-guk, a D-rank. Sang-guk gets offended because Lee disobeyed his orders. Angrily, he activates his skill and gets ready to attack Lee. But with a calm face, Lee apologizes and tells Sang-guk to look around. Now everyone is staring. All eyes are on Sang-guk. Lee calmly reminds him, if you attack your own subordinate, your reputation will be ruined forever. Sang-guk freezes. He's stunned and ultimately backs off. He orders Lee and his team to eat first, then finish their assigned mission. But inside the cafeteria, all the spoons are gone. Everyone's confused, until they spot someone munching on metal. It's Lee. He's literally eating the spoons, because he has a unique power. He can absorb metal and turn it into strength. Lee can control all sorts of metal objects. Night falls. Lee and his team are on border patrol. Lee tells his squad, I'll go patrol for a bit. Stay here and hold the post. Suddenly, a gate appears deep in the forest. Then, knives fly out of nowhere, slicing into the monsters. It's Lee. He planned this ambush for 3 days, and now it's happening. Monsters charge toward him, but with a single hand gesture, Lee controls his flying blades and decapitates them with ease. The monster corpses drop loot, and Lee, he starts eating it, chewing slowly, even though it tastes disgusting. The remaining monsters look at him. What the hell is this guy doing? Turns out, he's eating the monster's mana cores, which contain metal. By consuming them, Lee grows even stronger. It's time, he says. This is a mana core mukbang. More monsters charge in, but Lee rolls like a donut, dodging their attacks. He swings his flying blades, slashing through the monster's leg tendons. From above the trees, one monster hides, furious, watching his comrades fall. Suddenly, another monster attacks from behind. Lee grabs a fallen monster's sword. With insane speed and precision, he parries the strike, then spins like a ballerina, slicing the monster's neck clean off. Lee glances around. He's searching for something. There it is, perched in the trees. The boss monster, Goblin Shaman. Lee heads over to collect the drops from his kills. But suddenly, the Goblin Shaman casts a powerful spell. The ground starts shaking. Lee just smiles. It's all part of the plan. Spikes of sharp earth erupt from the ground, piercing both Lee and the monsters. Watching from above, the Goblin Shaman is pleased. He thinks he's killed Lee. But then, from the mist, Lee reappears. He attacks with his flying blades and a fallen monster's sword. The goblin blocks the strike with ease. Lee smirks. Dumbass, that was just a feint. He follows up with another flying blade strike. But unfortunately, it's still not strong enough. The goblin blocks again, and now it's pissed. All the other monsters gain confidence, seeing their boss handle Lee like that. Suddenly, a system warning pops up. You've used too much mana. Conserve it. The goblin lifts his staff, preparing to finish Lee. But just then, Lee's teammate shows up from behind. He was searching for Lee, worried he hadn't returned yet. Sensing the opportunity, the Goblin Shaman yells in monster language, ordering his minions to attack Lee's friend. One goblin charges in and swings its sword. From a distance, Lee shouts, "Duck!" Then he opens fire with a machine gun, blasting the monster to bits. Lee leaps onto the monster's face, sticks the gun into its mouth, and pulls the trigger. Brutal. But just when Lee turns around, the monster vanishes back into the gate. Then, ring ring. Call comes in. Lee reports to his teammates. A new gate just opened, in the middle of the forest. The monsters suddenly moved. They were now attacking a different guard post. 2 guards tried to take cover from the oncoming assault. One of them was already too injured to even stand. Then suddenly, everything went quiet. In the distance, a Goblin Shaman began casting his magic. He launched a barrage of pebbles, fired as fast as bullets, toward the guard post. The 2 guards tried to hold their ground, even though they were shaken. and barely able to fight back. One of them, already on the brink of death, raised his weapon to his own head. He turned to his comrade and said goodbye, asking him to keep fighting. The goblin didn't care. He began casting again, preparing another deadly spell. But the soldier also activated his skill. He aimed carefully, locking on to his target. And then he saw a glowing light. It was Lee. He had caught one of the monsters and gave a signal. Aim for the glowing mark on the monster's body. From a distance, Lee pulled the trigger remotely. A flaming arrow flew through the air and struck the monster dead on. Boom! The monster exploded into a pile of roasted meat. Lee smiled. His plan worked. He saved mana and took down another monster. But the Goblin Shaman wasn't happy. Furious, he launched another flurry of rock magic straight at Lee. Lee dodged quickly, diving into the bushes. The impact was insane. Huge trees were leveled into the ground. Lee radioed the guard, telling him to reload the arrow. Then, Lee moved into position, flanked the monster, and remotely pulled the trigger again. Another fire arrow blasted toward the enemy. This time, the flames pierced through the monster's body and burned it alive. But now, Lee had only 12% mana left. Suddenly, from behind, his friend Junmo screamed for help. The Goblin Shaman had taken him hostage. Lee immediately threw a flying knife. But the goblin shouted in its monstrous language, ordering Lee to stop and surrender. Lee dropped his weapon, pretending to give up. Two monsters raised their weapons, ready to shred Lee into pieces. But Lee smirked and pulled the trigger again from afar. His ally's weapon fired, unleashing a brutal attack on the Goblin Shaman. Then Lee ran as fast as he could toward Junmo. But the goblin was escaping. Lee didn't let up. He launched more flying knives. But with each attack, his mana dropped faster and faster. The goblin was getting close to the gate. Then Lee saw something, a shiny metal hanging from the goblin's necklace. With his last bit of mana, he pulled it toward him. The goblin collapsed. Lee had only 1% mana left. With all his strength, he went all in and fired a flying knife straight into the goblin's head. Boom! A brutal strike pierced the shaman's skull, and Lee's mana was gone. Suddenly, a yellow light began to glow beside him. A holy light, from a knight assigned to hunt monsters. Lee rushed to the goblin's head. He opened it up and pulled out a shining stone. A soldier appeared behind him and ordered him to put his hands up. But Lee stayed calm and ate the monster core. Then he spoke. "This is Private Lee Hyanwook, rank F." He was placed on a stretcher and lifted out. Lee smiled with deep satisfaction. His brutal fight paid off. The monster core he devoured was adamantium. The system notified him. Adamantium is an extremely rare item, and once fully absorbed, Lee would gain a rare and powerful ability. He handed the rest over to the special forces. After an exhausting battle, Lee smiled and whispered, "This is the beginning of my rise. The Steel Emperor will return." Lee Hyanwook. The next day, Lee reported to one of the generals at the base. Without any small talk, the commander handed him a new rank. He was now a non-commissioned officer. At the same time, the system notified Lee that all the adamantium in his body had been fully absorbed, granting him a new skill, Steel Physique. Lee was stunned, overwhelmed by everything happening all at once. Still, he didn't dwell on it. He went straight to the gym to train his body. If he wanted to survive, he had to get stronger. From across the room, two men watched him, smirking, clearly plotting something. A bulky man walked up to Lee and asked, "You done with that?" But before Lee could answer, the guy rudely snatched the weights away. Everyone turned to look at Lee with uneasy expressions. Lee instantly knew who was behind this. The annoying prick, Oh Sangwook. Without making a scene, Lee stood up and calmly challenged the guy to a match. In the military base's sparring arena, Lee and the brute faced each other from opposite corners of the ring. The man stuck his tongue out in a weird way and grinned. "What the hell is bro doing?" The big man charged at Lee, throwing a massive punch. The impact sent Lee flying backward. That punch was no joke. The crowd whispered his name, Lee Wonsook, a known brute around the base. But then Wonsook winced, feeling something strange. It was like punching solid steel. Turns out, Lee had activated his new skill, Steel Physique, turning his arm into solid metal at the last second. With a smirk, Lee started taunting the oversized gorilla. Wonsook growled and came at him again, blinded by rage. Lee sidestepped to the left and kicked Wonsook's knee from the side. Then, without pause, he smashed his fist right into Wonsook's face. The brute crashed down in the middle of the ring. Gasps filled the gym. No one could believe it. The big boy just got dropped. But it wasn't over yet. Wonsook grabbed Lee by the collar and lifted him up. Furious, he prepared to slam Lee down onto the ring with all his strength. But Lee twisted his body midair and broke free from Wonsook's grip. A straight jab came flying at Lee's face, but he dodged it just in time. He dodged again, and again, and again, until he was backed into the corner of the ring. Won-suk saw his chance. He threw another jab with perfect timing. But Lee ducked low and rolled right under it. "You need some cardio, big boy. Want me to get you a treadmill, huh?" Lee teased with a grin. Won-suk was fuming. His body felt heavy. Too heavy. That's when he realized Lee was controlling the metal eyelets in his boots. His feet felt stuck like he was fighting in quicksand. Lee kept taunting, "Do a little more cardio. I'll even throw in a box of donuts after." Won-suk roared in frustration, his anger boiling over. Then suddenly he activated his skill. His body bulked up, muscle tearing through his shirt. Now he really looked like a giant gorilla. It was his body-strengthening skill. The fight had just reached its second phase. Won-suk lifted Lee high into the air with a roar, and slammed him hard to the ground. But Lee locked his legs around Won-suk's arm mid-fall. Flying armbar. A high-risk, high-reward move, and Lee nailed it. Won-suk tried to land a jab with his free arm, but he stopped. Lee was about to snap his pinky. Reluctantly, Won-suk let go. Lee flipped away, spun around, and climbed onto Won-suk's back. Then he wrapped his arms tightly around Won-suk's neck. Rear naked choke. A smile crept across Lee's face, activating steel physique once again. His arms turned into solid steel. He didn't hold back, pouring every ounce of strength into the chokehold. Suddenly, the system flashed a warning. Skill overuse detected. Lee's facial muscles bulged unnaturally under his skin. He was pushing past his limits. But then, something was off. Won-suk started shaking violently. Boom! A massive shockwave tore through the ring. Won-suk had triggered another skill. His body expanded, now even bigger than before. More beast than man. It was now a pure test of endurance. Who could hold on longer? Lee screamed and tightened the choke with everything he had. Finally, Won-suk's gigantic body collapsed to the canvas. The room went silent, jaws dropped. Lee had won. Against all odds. From the crowd, a tall officer stepped forward. "Sergeant Cheon Myung-ho. What's your name?" he asked. Lee stood tall and saluted. "Lee Hyun-wook. Rank F, sir." Without hesitation, Cheon handed him a black invitation card. "Join my squad, the Black Tigers." "But, I'm just an F rank," Lee replied. Cheon smirked. "Ranks are numbers. You're a real soldier." This wasn't part of Lee's plan. He just wanted a quiet life. But life had other plans. He looked at the card, unsure. "I'll think about it." "When you're ready," Cheon said. "You know where to find us." That night, the city was bustling with life. Suddenly, a little boy noticed what looked like a monkey running across the street. Curious, he chased it all the way into a narrow alley. But then his face froze in fear. What he saw wasn't a monkey, it was a rat monster. And not just one, there were thousands. Right in the middle of the swarm, a gate had appeared. Meanwhile, Lee was at the battalion's armory. There, he was carefully choosing a weapon. Oddly enough, he picked one of the ugliest-looking swords on the rack. Its name was Sword of the Cloud. At first glance, it didn't look like much. But it had a special trait. It could absorb water and release a dense fog. And the legend behind it? In the mythology of Dangung, 3 weather gods descended from the heavens. They combined their powers into one weapon, and this sword was born. Though it looked plain, it held a hidden potential. If awakened, it would unleash the power of lightning, strong enough for a single warrior to take down a mid-level gate alone. But before Lee could test the sword's power, a loud alarm suddenly echoed across the military camp. Emergency alert. All the soldiers woke up instantly, grabbing their gear, preparing for deployment. Back in the city, 2 knights raised a white flag to signal evacuation. Through the crowd, a white knight walked calmly. He was a member of the Changhua Guild. Elsewhere, Lee was already leading his squad. He briefed them carefully. This time, their enemy wasn't orcs, it was kobolds. Kobolds were far more dangerous. They had small, fast-moving bodies and venomous bites. Lee instructed his squad to plant motion sensors to detect any sudden movement. He then pulled aside Park Junmo, assigning him a critical task. Lee would give him a signal, and when the moment came, Junmo had to lead the squad out of the area immediately. At first, Junmo refused. That would be desertion, he argued. Soldiers are not allowed to retreat from battle. But Lee calmly replied, "This isn't desertion, it's a strategy." The operation had begun. Military troops marched into the Kobold's nest, ready for battle. They activated a magic circle, preparing their attack formation. At the same time, the Kobolds surged forward as a pack, charging toward the soldiers. And just as the creatures reached the edge of the magic circle, boom! A wave of fire magic exploded outward with massive range and heat, engulfing everything nearby. Meanwhile, Lee was still outside, busy setting up motion sensors around the perimeter. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out to him. It was Lieutenant Lee Minwi, a C-rank mage with warp magic abilities. She scolded Lee harshly. "Don't disgrace our unit in front of the other guilds," she snapped. Before Lee could respond, another figure appeared. It was Choi Sonia, a C-rank healer. She approached and said, "The battalion commander wants to see you." Lee went to meet the commander. What he received wasn't praise. It was a test. The commander assigned Lee the responsibility of leading the second wave of the attack through the gate. Lee tried to refuse. He wanted to understand the commander's true intention. "My teammates are still just F-rank hunters," he argued. "I can't risk their lives for this." But the commander was firm. "This is a direct order," he said sternly. "No exceptions." Lee clenched his jaw in frustration. He couldn't believe it. Just then, a phone rang in the command room. The message was grim. The Kobold boss had emerged from the nest. Time was running out. Lee had to find a way to act fast. If he didn't, his entire team would die. A few tense moments later, Lee was finally granted permission to leave the room. As he walked out, he muttered to himself, "I still lack combat experience. If leading this mission means sacrificing my comrades, then I'd rather disobey orders." In the end, the battalion commander let him go, but warned that Lee would have to face punishment later. Lee didn't waste a second. He sprinted back toward his squad at full speed. "Everyone, wake up!" he shouted. "Watch the gas!" But it was already too late. Green smoke began to rise, then suddenly exploded. A chain of toxic gas bombs detonated along the path. Lee quickly pulled out his gas mask and put it on. Then, from his magic inventory, he summoned his sword. He grabbed a water pouch and poured the contents onto the blade. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the battlefield, a kobold lunged at a soldier, sinking its teeth deep into the man's stomach. Junmo saw his comrade fall. Without hesitation, he opened fire, unloading bullets furiously at the kobolds. The monsters scattered in fear as the bullets flew past them. But the injured soldier was in critical condition. His teammates had to drag him back toward the safe zone. Even in the middle of this chaos, the soldiers fought with everything they had left. But they were out of ammunition. Junmo reached into his pouch and pulled something out. Then he turned to his teammates. "I'll lure the kobolds away," he said. "You all fall back to the rear side now." Everyone immediately objected. "No, that's suicide." But Junmo raised his hand. "As the squad's vice captain, this is my command." With that, Park Junmo activated his skill. He sprinted forward, lightning crackling in his hands, a glowing beacon to draw the monsters in. "Get out of here!" he shouted behind him. The kobolds were closing in fast. They were nearly on top of him. But then, whoosh! Flying blades cut through the air, striking the kobolds in an instant. They dropped dead on the spot. And standing behind them was none other than Lee Heinwook. He raised his sword high and activated his skill. Wet fog, a mist that neutralizes poison gas as it spreads. Then he turned to Junmo. "You were amazing, Vice Captain Park Junmo. Seriously, well done." Junmo was overwhelmed with emotion. His eyes welled up with tears. Lee hurled another flying blade straight at the kobold in front of him. But something felt off. He scanned the battlefield. "Where's the boss?" That's when it hit him. His teammates were in danger. Lee turned around and sprinted with everything he had. Meanwhile, at the emergency defense camp, the squads were barely holding on. Soldiers were collapsing. Some were wounded. Others were dying. And the kobold boss was still rampaging, striking the last of their defenses. They tried to hold the line, but the barrier was already torn apart. Then, an entire wave of kobolds charged through the breach. From behind the thick fog, Lee emerged, hurling his flying knives once again. But the kobold boss dodged every one of them. Lee didn't let up. He kept chasing, eyes locked on the monster. One of his blades struck a ceramic jar behind the boss. Crack! It broke open, releasing a cloud of poison gas. The monsters started scattering. Then suddenly, they pulled out blowpipes. Dozens of toxic darts were launched toward Lee and Junmo. "Down!" Lee shouted. Junmo hit the ground, while Lee raised both hands. Activating his skill, he began manipulating multiple metal objects at once, forming a protective wall. "This can't go on," he thought. "If this keeps up, we're going to die here." He turned to Junmo. "On my mark, run for the camp, got it?" Junmo nodded. Then, they bolted, sprinting with the last of their stamina. More monsters appeared behind them. More poison darts flew through the air. Junmo dove into the camp, while Lee turned around and blocked the last barrage with sheer willpower. Finally, they made it inside the barrier. But what Lee saw shocked him. Soldiers down everywhere. No medical support. And the one who was supposed to be healing was curled up in the corner, trembling. The healer, Sonya, wasn't casting a single spell. "What the hell are you all doing?" Lee shouted, and then, slap, he struck her across the face. "Are you trying to get us all killed?" Lee glared at Sonya, the healer still trembling on the ground. "Do you really want to live with that kind of regret for the rest of your life? Regret is heavier than anything in this world." Those words hit her like thunder. Sonya stood up, tears still in her eyes, and began casting healing spells. One by one, the wounded soldiers were bathed in light. Lee saw it, and for the first time since the chaos began, he exhaled. He turned toward the battlefield. "I'll borrow your knives for a moment," he said to the soldiers nearby. Then, Lee activated his skill. He closed his eyes, concentrating hard. All around the area, he had already placed tiny metal sensors. His mind scanned the battlefield. He could sense every single metallic object. And if a metal wasn't familiar, it meant only one thing: kobolds, holding weapons. Lee raised his arm. "Let's begin." Dozens of knives floated into the air. Then, they scattered like a storm. Silent, deadly, precise. From behind rocks, behind walls, hidden kobolds were sliced through the neck, before they even realized what hit them. But the kobold boss? He blocked Lee's blades again. Lee gritted his teeth. He focused all his attacks on the boss. Knives shot through the air, targeting weak spots. But the monster was strong, still deflecting each strike. Then, from the side, a volley of poison darts came flying. Lee had no time to dodge. The darts pierced his armor. He stumbled. "Shit!" The boss kobold roared, giving a command. Suddenly, all the kobolds charged forward at once. But Lee wasn't done yet. He activated his steel body skill. His skin shimmered into hardened metal. "You filthy rats!" Lee's eyes burned with fury. He unleashed everything. The knives, now spinning at lightning speed, became a deadly tornado. Dozens of kobolds were torn apart. Then, boom! A massive explosion echoed through the area. The smoke cleared. Only one figure remained: the kobold boss. Lee stood face to face with the kobold boss, eyes burning with the desire for revenge. This is the moment to pay for your actions. Without warning, the kobold boss released a cloud of toxic green smoke from the vase behind him. But then, silence. Lee's focus sharpened. Metal control. The air around him crackled as he used his skill. The kobold boss stood motionless, as though frozen in place. Lee felt a chill run down his spine. Why wasn't the monster moving? Then, a tremor beneath his feet. The boss had cast a spell underground. A dark magic crept up toward Lee and wrapped tightly around his legs. Before Lee could react, the boss yanked him off the ground. The kobold was toying with him. Lee was launched into the air, but suddenly, he vanished. From behind the boss, Lee emerged, shaking his head. "God damn it. This is not funny, filthy sewer rat." Luckily, Lee had activated his steel body skill in time, or his bones would have shattered on impact. Before he could recover, the boss lunged forward with lightning speed. He spun and struck from Lee's blind spot. Lee reacted just in time, dodging the blow. His body glowed once more as he activated his steel body skill. With unimaginable power, Lee slammed a steel foot into the boss's skull. The kobold was sent flying backward, tumbling across the ground. Lee grinned. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. The sweetest revenge was within reach. Then, a flurry of flying knives pierced the air from behind the boss. Before it could react, the monster was torn apart, its body shredded into mincemeat. Lee wasn't done, though. He grabbed the dying kobold's body. His mind flashed back to the horrors of the past. How the kobolds had slaughtered his entire team. Without a hint of sympathy, Lee plunged a knife straight into the monster's heart. A system notification appeared. Cloud Sword has absorbed elite monster's blood. But Lee wasn't satisfied yet. He still craved more. With a twisted smile, he raised another knife and controlled it with precision. In one swift motion, he split the boss's head in two. Another system message flashed. Cloud Master Sword has absorbed 11% of the elite monster's blood. Finally, Lee stood back, panting. The battle was over. The kobold boss dropped a mysterious item, a Demon's Metal Inferno. The system chimed again. Demon's Metal Inferno, a rare item of demon race power. A rare metal tier item. Lee took a closer look at the metal. In his past life, this item had been owned by the most vile creatures in the world, necromancers. But why was it in the possession of a kobold? Lee's frustration deepened. He wondered if it would be worth just eating it. After all, it was metal. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Stay where you are." It was a military knight named Yunha, who commanded Lee to remain still. Fortunately, Lee had hidden the metal before turning around, acting casual. "I didn't do anything," he said, his tone calm. Just then, a woman stepped forward, her eyes wide with admiration. Your skills in battle are extraordinary, she said. You defeated the Kobold boss with ease. She introduced herself as Catherine Yu Hina, head of the strategy department from the Blue Flower Guild, a top-ranking A-class player, and the strongest princess of the largest guild in South Korea. Lee's face twisted with anger as Hina stood before him, smiling smugly. He had just realized the horrific truth. This woman had been one of the players who wiped out humanity in the past. And it was Hina who had killed Yunha. Her arrogance was unbearable. Don't you recognize me? Hina taunted, her voice dripping with superiority. Lee stood still, his mind reeling. All the unsolved grudges and unavenged deaths flooded his thoughts. His silent fury burned inside him, yet he refused to speak. Yunha, from a distance, finally intervened. Civilians are not allowed in this area, he called out firmly, trying to de-escalate the tension. But Hina wasn't backing down. I outrank you, she sneered. I am the head of the strategy department. Just then, the sound of a massive military vehicle approached, signaling the arrival of the battalion commander. The commander immediately began inspecting the area, examining the slain monsters with precision. His presence alone commanded respect. With a tone that was both respectful and authoritative, the battalion commander addressed Hina. This is a military operation zone. Regulations are clear. No one is allowed here, regardless of rank. You need to leave. Hina, though reluctant, finally relented, acknowledging the rules and bowing her head. Fine, she said coldly, before performing a theatrical gesture. She kissed the nameplate attached to her chest and handed it to Lee, slipping it inside his uniform with a sly grin. Don't forget to contact me, she said, her words dripping with hidden meaning. The battalion commander, satisfied with Hina's departure, turned to Lee with a new task. You're in charge now. You'll lead the second wave assault on the Cobalt Gate. You have full autonomy to choose your team. A week later, in the military camp's AMT base, Lee was in pain, collapsed in the camp's restroom. He had successfully absorbed the demon's metal inferno, but the effects were brutal. His body screamed in agony as the skill breath room activated, giving him a new power. But the cost was immense. His body was racked with unimaginable pain. Outside, Junmo called for him, his voice laced with a hint of humor. Lee, are you watching videos of girls in bikinis again? Suddenly, a blinding red light erupted from the restroom, flashing brightly. After several days, Lee finally emerged from the torment. Though he still ached, he had begun to regain his strength. And soon after, the long-awaited vacation arrived. At the Seoul station, the light from the restroom still shone, now symbolizing his new power. He had unlocked Breath Room Flame, a skill that accelerated his metal absorption rate. He could now unleash fiery breath after consuming every 3 kilograms of metal. Lee stared at his reflection, the weight of his past pressing heavily on his shoulders. He knew he wasn't yet strong enough to face the gate on his own. But in this station, in this city, too many lives had been lost that he couldn't save. This time, things would be different. During his vacation, Lee would prepare, gathering everything he needed to confront the impending battles. Chapter 14. Lee boarded the train to continue his journey, but fate had other plans. To his surprise, he ran into Sonia aboard the train. The two of them exchanged awkward glances, the silence between them thick with discomfort. Finally, Lee arrived at Yeongdeung City, with just 3 nights and 4 days of leave to make progress in his plans. His first step, tackling the chaos of the future. The first thing he needed was money. Money is everything, dude. With a determined stride, Lee made his way to a rundown, ominous building, the Guild Hope headquarters. Inside, he met Park Cheol-soo, the guild leader who, in the future, would help lower-tier players find faster ways to increase their capabilities. I want to invest, Lee said, his voice steady. And I need your help, Park Cheol-soo. He handed over his bank card, containing a generous sum of 20 million won. Park Cheol-soo expressed his gratitude. Thank you for entrusting me with such a sum, he said, bowing his head in appreciation. Lee smiled, remembering a time when he was nothing but trash in the eyes of the world. Useless, broken. But Park Cheol-soo had stood by him, encouraging him to rise above it all and live a better life. After parting ways with Cheol-soo, Lee ventured to a district known for its legendary blacksmiths. This was his second step in preparing for the future. He entered a blacksmith shop, hoping to find a legendary dwarf craftsman capable of forging master-grade items. Inside, he found the craftsman, Gang Jong-do, deeply focused on forging a massive javelin sword made of orichalcum. In the future, Lee thought, this sword will be crucial in helping humanity defeat the dragons that threaten to destroy the earth. Just then, a young woman appeared, a blacksmith master named Kong Baek-seol. Lee greeted her warmly. It's been a long time. Baek-seol, with her keen eye, immediately recognized Lee's expensive gear. a jacket worth 1.5 million won, and a bag priced at 1.6 million won. Her expression changed instantly, and she asked, "What can I help you with, young master?" Lee didn't hesitate. After some discussion, he purchased a magic potion worth 18 million won. The dwarf blacksmith asked, "Why so many potions?" Lee shrugged. "I'm just trading," he replied casually. After making the purchase, Lee bid Baek-seol farewell, telling her he would be a regular customer at her shop in the future. In the timeline ahead, Baek-seol would tragically fall in battle, but this time, Lee had the opportunity to protect her. As night fell, Lee found himself in a motel on the outskirts of town, Gag Motel. He was attempting to increase his strength by consuming the metal stones he had bought from the blacksmith. The metals Lee absorbed were laced with poison, an intentional choice to build his resistance to toxins. But the process was excruciating. The pain felt like trying to hold back a bathroom emergency during school. It was unbearable. "Hell nah, bro," Lee thought as his discomfort grew, but he held on, enduring the pain. 2 days later, he had successfully absorbed all the metal. The result? He now had poison resistance level 2, and he could detect metal from a distance of 135 meters. Suddenly, the system alerted him that he had acquired a special skill. Metal Crush, Grade D. This skill allowed him to crush metal using mana. But just as Lee was processing this, he felt a strange disturbance in the room. The door exploded inward, and a man charged at him. The man threw a punch, but Lee remained unfazed. He thought, "This guy's like Sung Jin-woo, he thinks he's tough. I'll just block with my steel-like physique." Lee remained cool as a cucumber and casually told the thug, "Just go home to your mom, man." The commotion caught the attention of other motel guests, but the thug was far from done. Anger flared in his eyes as he kicked at Lee's head. Lee swiftly ducked and avoided the attack, but he was reaching his breaking point. He had tried to resolve things peacefully, but this guy wasn't listening. With a deep breath, Lee countered, hitting the thug squarely in the stomach with all his strength. The thug crumpled to the ground, writhing in pain like a lizard, but the thug wasn't finished. He rose, and strange light began to radiate from his legs, signaling the activation of his skill. Lee realized that things were about to escalate. If this keeps up, innocent people will get hurt. Without hesitation, Lee jumped out the window. But the thug wasn't far behind, he leaped out after him. A massive explosion shook the motel as Lee was thrown out of the window. The thug wasn't done yet. He chased Lee, jumping out of the window to continue the fight. Lee immediately activated his metal control skill. He jumped high, leaping over the thug. Lee landed safely. However, to his surprise, the thug kept chasing him, preparing to crush his head with a kick. Quickly, Lee dodged and moved to the side. The thug was furious, seeing Lee dodging like a rat in a sewer. The thug charged at Lee, attacking brutally, but Lee stayed calm and avoided every strike. The commotion attracted a lot of attention. The thug prepared again, his feet charged with magic. Lee shouted, "Dumbass, there are civilians behind me? Are you gonna kill them?" The thug didn't care, replying, "Civilians are just pampered trash." The thug charged at Lee. "Stop me if you can, asshole." Lee was furious. He wouldn't forgive this thug. With intense anger, Lee activated his metal smash skill. In an instant, the thug's iron foot shattered into pieces along with his bones. Lee stood still, eyes cold and unblinking, as he destroyed the thug's foot. The thug screamed in pain, unable to stand anymore. Lee controlled sharp metal and directed it toward the thug's head. The thug's name was revealed to be Wonchil. Lee coldly said, "Never show your face to me again, you bastard, or I'll destroy your whole body and feed it to livestock." Soon after, the police arrived and stopped the fight. The next morning, Lee was at a special player police station. Lee explained that he was attacked by the thug and was simply defending himself. After the investigation, the police released Lee. Lee got ready with a running pose. Then, he ran incredibly fast like he was the Flash. Lee headed toward the station in Seoul. Lee entered, scanning the situation because, in his past life, a large gate appeared at this station. Lee remembered that in 2 minutes, the gate would appear again. Suddenly, Sonia appeared, meeting Lee and worrying about him after his fight with a player the previous night. Lee ignored her, staying focused, with only 1 minute left before the gate appeared. Without realizing it, Lee dropped his bag full of marbles, causing a disturbance. Then, toxic gas emerged, cracks appeared in the ceiling, and a whirlwind formed. A massive, black monster's head emerged from the gate. The monster dropped down and began rampaging violently. People scattered in fear. Meanwhile, the players tried to fight the monster using fire magic. However, the monster stood proudly, unaffected by the damage. The monster attacked one of the players with its sharp legs. Luckily, his friend jumped in to save him. The player was John Manhu, a veteran rank C player. He said, "This monster is immune to fire magic. We need to switch to ice spells. The monster was attacked from all sides, and slowly its body began to freeze. John Manhwa thought, this big monster will definitely rise again. Without hesitation, he jumped and charged at the monster. But the monster quickly rose and greeted him with its gaping mouth, ready to eat him. John Manhwa activated his shield guard skill. From behind, Lee appeared. The monster's name was Venomous Armored Spider. The skin was incredibly tough, harder than steel. Lee used his Metal Crash skill. The metal Lee controlled crushed the monster's body and its thick skin. Everyone was shocked to see Lee, a rank F player, able to injure such a massive monster. The monster screamed in pain and anger from Lee's attack. Lee grinned wickedly, like a villain, laughing and saying, "Damn! Scream louder!" Lee immediately fired the steel balls he controlled. The balls slammed into the monster's armored shell with tremendous force. Finally, he used his combo metal spin skill. The steel balls spun and repeatedly stabbed into the spider monster's skin. The monster screamed in agony. Lee grinned psychotically, saying, "How does it feel to have your insides spun like a blender?" Eventually, the spider monster collapsed, falling to the floor. Lee savored the intense sensation. Lee turned to the players and said, "Don't feel safe. This isn't over. This is just the warm-up for a bigger disaster." 2 more spider monsters emerged from the gate. Lee grinned, eagerly awaiting this moment. Lee immediately attacked the monsters with his steel balls. Outside the Soul Station, a massive black sphere hovered in the sky, almost like Thanos nuts. The military had completely surrounded the station, soldiers in full gear aiming their weapons and setting up defensive perimeters. Suddenly, a system screen popped up in front of every player. A hidden event has appeared. Entry is open to all. Exit is impossible until the timer ends or the boss is defeated. 2 helicopters descended quickly onto the scene. From them emerged Battalion Commander Kong Suk Min and Hina, the strategic director of the powerful Chonghua Guild. Meanwhile, inside the station, Lee was engaged in a fierce battle against the giant spider monsters. One of the spiders slammed its massive leg toward Lee, but he dodged and transformed his leg into metal using his skill, Metal Control. "Hey, stop standing around like it's a circus show," Lee shouted. "Freeze that damn spider now." The soldiers responded quickly, unleashing waves of ice magic. In just 0.7 seconds, the spider began to freeze over like a giant block of monster-shaped frozen food. But another spider ambushed one of the soldiers from behind. Lee reacted instantly, controlling his nuts metal ball and hurling it at full force. The ball smashed into the spider's body with brutal impact. Without stopping, Lee activated metal bending, spinning the metal sphere like a blender inside the creature and tearing up its internal organs. The spider let out a horrible screech before collapsing to the ground. Meanwhile, the frozen spider began to crack and rage again, breaking free from the ice. Lee didn't flinch. He activated slicing metal. In one clean motion, the giant spider was split in half, green blood spraying in every direction. The battle was over. For now, the situation seemed under control. Lee gathered the troops. "Listen up, this isn't over. This is a double dungeon." As he spoke, another gate began to shimmer into existence beneath the stairwell. Inside it stood a shadowy figure, watching. Without warning, Lee launched his metal balls toward the figure. But the man quickly activated his skill and vanished behind thick, writhing roots. "He found me?" the man muttered, shocked. Lee stepped forward through the darkness, eyes cold. He had found the one behind the Soul Station gate incident. The man's name was Yang Jo Sup, a rank B player with a terrifying ability, flesh consumption. He had the potential to become a world-ending villain. Yang Jo Sup lunged toward Lee, desperate to erase any trace of his crimes. But Lee stayed calm, then suddenly breathed fire straight from his mouth. Yang Jo Sup, badly burned but still breathing, offered Lee all the rewards he had earned as a villain. Treasures soaked in blood. But Lee didn't care. Mercy wasn't part of the mission. He exhaled another blast of fire from his mouth, engulfing Yang Jo Sup in flames. The man screamed in agony, but somehow he still clung to life. Without a word, Lee launched his final attack, ending Yang Jo Sup's life on the spot. At that exact moment, a new gate emerged from the ground. 2 towering guardians stepped out and approached Lee. A system message appeared. "Special quest available? Will you accept?" Lee answered with cold defiance. "I refuse." He despised the guardians. In a future timeline, one of them had murdered him and then gone on to slaughter humanity. The gate vanished, leaving only silence behind. Lee reached down and picked something up from a pile of bones near him. It was an item, a key to the Akashic Armory, a mythical weapons vault. Villains across the world had searched for it, killing innocent people just for a chance to claim it. Lee smirked darkly. One more piece of revenge, complete. In the main hall of the station, chaos reigned. Civilians were shouting, panicking. Lee burst in and shouted, "What the hell are you doing here? Do you want to die? This place is going to turn into hell. Go hide now." But the citizens were too scared to move. They didn't trust the military anymore. Lee's fury boiled over. "We risk our lives for you," he shouted. "And you doubt us? That's worse than being trash." Suddenly, the troop commander snapped at Lee. "Who do you think you are, yelling at civilians like that?" Lee glared back. "I just sealed a double dungeon and came straight here." "Bullshit," the commander snapped. "You expect me to believe you handled that alone?" Lee ignored him and turned to the guards. "Prepare for the second wave. Don't waste time listening to that fool." Without hesitation, the soldiers followed Lee's orders. He called everyone to gather around him. "There's something you all need to know. This next wave, it may release deadly spider venom into the air. Gear up with toxic gas masks, everyone." Lee began laying out the first steps of his battle strategy. Moments later, the gate opened, and the monsters came. Just as he predicted, one of the giant spiders spat out a cloud of poisonous gas toward Lee. He dashed away, luring the monster toward a narrow passage he had chosen for the ambush. Soldiers opened fire, bullets slicing into the spider's thick hide. From behind, mages cast ice spells, trying to freeze the creature in place. Lee launched himself into the air, then slashed downward with his metal blade, slicing the beast clean in two. That was Lee's plan, fast, coordinated, and lethal. But then the system alert rang out once again. "Boss monster has appeared." Lee's eyes widened. "The second wave has a boss?" The monster emerged from the gate, towering over 30 meters tall, monstrous and horrifying. The system prompted him again. "Defeat the boss monster." Lee shouted with urgency. "Everyone, run! The future has changed." The boss monster lunged at Lee, its massive claws slicing through the air like guillotines. Lee barely dodged the attack, propelling himself into the sky with a burst of speed. He activated his skill Metal Crush, intending to strike with overwhelming force. But the system's cold voice interrupted him. "Metal Crush failed. Target's power exceeds yours." The monster's claws surged toward him again, aiming straight for his skull. Lee quickly shifted to Metal Control, twisting the steel beams nearby to shield and propel himself away from the deadly blow. But the impact still hit the stadium. A single swipe shattered a massive support pillar of Soul Station like it was paper. An insane idea flashed in Lee's mind. Bring the whole damn station down and bury the spider in the rubble. Dodging and weaving through attacks, Lee began targeting the support pillars, smashing them one by one while evading the monster's deadly strikes. Finally, only one pillar remained. Lee dashed toward it, ready to finish what he started. But just as he reached it, a devastating blow from the monster's enormous limb sent him flying. Lee crashed into the narrow gap between the crumbling pillars, activating his iron body skill to withstand the force. The monster didn't hesitate. It slammed both Lee and the final pillar into the ground with monstrous strength. The impact sent Lee hurtling across the debris. He could feel his bones cracking, the pain flooding his senses. And then, a flash of light. The squad commander appeared above, using his warp skill to teleport midair. With a war cry, he unleashed his strongest strike, obliterating the roof of Soul Station. Lee, bloody and broken, grinned manically. Exactly as planned. The massive station structure began to collapse with a thunderous roar, falling directly onto the boss monster. As Lee collapsed to the ground, barely clinging to life, his mana dropped to just 3%. With fading breath, he whispered, "I'm sorry, everyone," and lost consciousness. But at the final moment, the military commander activated his warp skill, teleporting Lee to the rooftop, saving him from certain death. Sonia, breathless and shaking, rushed to Lee's side, tears in her eyes. "I thought we'd lost you." The commander, however, was furious. "Damn it, Lee. Why do you keep doing this alone?" He scolded Lee harshly, demanding he start trusting his teammates. "You're not alone. Stop carrying the world on your back." Lee smiled weakly. That word, trust, was something he hadn't heard in a long time, and desperately needed to hear. But the moment of peace was short-lived. Lee's eyes shot open. "It's not over. The boss monster. It's coming back." With newfound determination, he leapt from the rooftop. "This time, I've got a plan. Listen up, everyone," he shouted to the crowd. "This is the key to defeating the boss monster. Trust me, follow my lead. We'll launch a surprise attack," he declared. Moments later, the giant spider emerged from the rubble, still alive but weakened. Above it, a massive water ball spell hovered, already prepared by Lee. "Now," Lee roared. "Drop the water ball. Crush it." And as the water engulfed the monster's body, Lee turned to his ally. "Park Jun-moo. Finish it now." Park Jun-moo stepped forward, electricity crackling in his palms. The soaking wet monster was the perfect conductor. The lightning exploded across its entire body, frying it from the inside with immense voltage. But then, a sharp voice cut through the battlefield. Everyone, stand down. It was the rescue team finally arriving, led by none other than a man built like a tank. Han Tae-san, a top-tier S-rank player. Nicknamed King of Power, second strongest in Korea, ninth in the world. He raised his voice. Stay where you are. I'll finish the job. Lee, bloodied and battered, smiled faintly. So this is what true S-rank power looks like. The colossal spider roared and lunged at Tae-san with terrifying speed. But with effortless precision, Tae-san blocked the strike, like swatting a fly. From the weapon mounted on his forearm, a violent explosion erupted, blasting straight into the spider monster's chest. The impact sent the creature flying, smashing into the station's thick concrete wall. But to Tae-san's surprise, not a single scratch marked its armored body. Gritting his teeth, Tae-san charged again, this time faster, stronger. He slammed his bare fist into the monster's massive head with earth-shaking force. But he wasn't done, not even close. Fueled by rage, he unleashed a brutal flurry of punches, pounding the creature over and over. Each strike echoed like thunder, and cracks finally appeared on the shell. But suddenly, a blue glow emerged from the monster's chest. With a deafening crack, the shell shattered completely, exploding into shards. From behind the beast, Lee appeared, his hands glowing with power. That was metal cutting. Just in time, Tae-san turned, furious. Are you insane? You could have died. Lee glared back. We've been risking our lives since the beginning. You just showed up and treated this like some game. Both men stepped forward, eyes locked on the monster's core, now exposed. A race began. Lee controlled sharp metal from afar, while Tae-san powered forward with brute force. Tae-san's fist collided with the monster. At the same moment, Lee's sharpened metal pierced the glowing chest. A massive explosion erupted, shaking the entire Seoul Station to its foundations. Then, the system's voice echoed across the battlefield. Boss monster defeated. Black zone has been cleared. Cheers erupted. Civilians and fighters alike shouted in relief. The nightmare was over. And then it was announced Lee had landed the final blow. He was awarded the main prize, a mysterious item. A necklace, Mananan Mac Liar's secret shield, a relic that creates an automatic barrier in battle and also serves as a dimensional storage. Lee smiled with satisfaction. He had finally cleared the Seoul Station gate. But from behind him, Tae-san's fury burned. Lee quickly tucked the necklace away, sensing trouble. This isn't just my reward, Lee said. It's ours. We stopped the second wave, and its commander. Tae-san wasn't moved. His voice was cold. I don't care. You took what was mine. Now tell me, how will you compensate me for stealing my prize? Lee narrowed his eyes and said coldly, Reward? You don't deserve any of it. I fought for everything from the start. Tae-san, burning with rage, threw a powerful punch at Lee. But before the hit could land, the battalion commander and Hina arrived at the scene. Lee smirked. This was his moment. Putting on a show, he quickly bowed and said, Tae-san, thank you for saving my team. We owe you everything. Then, without waiting for a reply, Lee turned and walked away calmly. He approached the battalion commander directly. Tae-san clenched his fists in fury, but Hina stepped between them. Don't cause a scene. The entire nation is watching, live on national TV. Just then, a teleportation gate flickered open in the middle of the station. From it emerged a tall man in uniform, Lieutenant Colonel Choi Jong-cheol, commander of the 3rd Magic Tactical Unit. He was ranked number 31 in South Korea, an elite rank A player. Disgusted by everything, Tae-san disappeared from the scene with a flash of high-speed movement. Meanwhile, the general approached Lee. You did well, the general said. You saved the civilians and defeated that monster. He placed a hand on Lee's shoulder. Ask for anything. You've earned it. Lee's eyes gleamed. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. I want a heroic-grade item, he said with a grin. Give me. Fail not. The general laughed heartily. That's quite the request. He nodded. We'll discuss the details later. But you've earned something big. Then and there, the general announced a special promotion for Lee. Lee bowed with a smug smile. Thank you, General. The general turned and left, leaving Lee standing tall in the center of it all. A few days later, at the military HQ, inside the barracks of the 1st Company of the 3rd Magic Tactical Unit, suddenly Park Junmo burst in. Hey, didn't you promise to train with us today? Lee groaned dramatically. Can't you see I'm sick? I'm clearly dying here. But his teammates just laughed. Give us orders, Commander Lee. We'll train however you say. With no way out, Lee sighed. Fine. Let's do this. After the training session ended, Lee was summoned by the battalion commander. Inside the room, Brigadier General Zhengqiu was already waiting. Without wasting time, the brigadier began explaining the situation. A few days ago, the Blue Flower Guild conducted a raid on a Crimson Gate in the Shrin area. He paused, his tone growing darker. But something unexpected happened. The guild members turned on each other. They started killing each other. Because of that, the gate was now officially classified as a Trouble Rank 3. To resolve it, every guild and organization in Korea had been ordered to cooperate. Zhengqiu added, only players level 18 or below may enter. The raid party is limited to 30 players maximum. And the worst part? He narrowed his eyes. The gate is crawling with zombies. Lee's heart skipped a beat. Zombies? Don't tell me. Is this the necromancer's doing? Zhengqiu let out a twisted smile. Normally, this would be a guild's responsibility. But this time, the military will step in. And Lee Hyenwook, we believe you're perfect for this job. The battalion commander looked at Lee. Can you handle it? Without hesitation, Lee answered firmly, I'll take the raid. But then he added, however, I can't do this with my current weapons and gear. He stared at the brigadier. What about the item you promised me? The legendary bow, Failnaught? It was a bow that never missed its target. A true artifact of kings once used in ancient battles, but it could normally only be fired once. But for Lee it was different. With his metal control abilities, he could manipulate and reuse it freely. Brigadier Zhengqiu grinned. This isn't a gift. Let's call it a deal. If you fail to clear the Crimson Gate, you'll take full responsibility. Lee leaned forward and smirked. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. Isn't that right, Brigadier? In a military training room, Lee's squad was finishing up a sparring session and had just defeated a C-rank monster. Lee gave a slight smile and calmly said, pack your gear. We move immediately. His teammates looked confused. What's wrong with Commander Lee now? But Lee suddenly shouted, we're going to fight until the death. 2 days later, military trucks were seen parked quietly along the roadside, engines humming low under the morning mist. Lee turned to his team. Load your weapons with holy rounds. We're fighting zombies this time. Meanwhile, in the Blue Flower Guild HQ, their commander seemed irritated by the joint operation. We'll separate from the military the moment we enter the gate, he ordered. Move independently. As the mission began, the Blue Flower Guild was the first to gather and step into the Crimson Gate. A few minutes later, the AMT military squad, led by Lee, followed inside. But the moment they entered, their expressions turned pale with shock. In front of them, a scene from hell. A member of Blue Flower was eating his own teammate. Chaos exploded. The guild members had lost their minds, attacking each other in a frenzy. And then, the guild leader himself transformed into a hideous monster and devoured his own subordinates. But suddenly,